It was a Saturday night to remember, December 4th, 1971. The Long Beach Arena in California had just hosted the International Karate Championships, the biggest martial arts event in the entire country. All day long, 3,000 fans packed the seats, watching some of the best fighters in the nation go head-to-head. Competitors had flown in from New York, Texas, Florida, Illinois, and beyond. The floor was loaded with skilled athletes from every major discipline: Taekwondo, Kenpo, and multiple styles of karate. Every single one of them came with the same goal: earn respect, grab a trophy, and prove they were the best. The competition was officially over. Winners had their prizes, the crowd was filing out. But the real drama hadn't started yet. Tucked away from the main arena, in a quiet back room, the post-event press conference was just getting underway. This was standard practice. Champions would sit down with reporters, share their thoughts, and give journalists something worth printing in Monday's paper. The setup was simple. Around 50 reporters from local papers and martial arts publications sat in neat rows, facing a long table fitted with microphones. The atmosphere was sharp and professional. At the center of it all sat Jim Kelly. Just 24 years old, Jim was hard to ignore. 6 feet tall, powerfully built, and wearing an easy, confident smile. He still had his white karate uniform on, black belt knotted at his waist, and a freshly won gold medal hanging around his neck. He'd just claimed the middleweight championship, and he'd done it in style. His speed was breathtaking, his technique nearly flawless. Judges and fans alike couldn't stop talking about him. Beside him sat Ed Parker, the man who founded the tournament and one of the most respected names in Kenpo karate. Ed was running the press conference, keeping things moving. He gave the reporters the nod to begin. A journalist from the Los Angeles Times got to his feet. "Jim Kelly, congratulations," he said. "Your speed today was extraordinary. There's already talk about who the fastest fighter in the country really is, and Bruce Lee's name keeps coming up. Do you think you're faster than him?" The room went dead quiet. It was a loaded question. Bruce Lee wasn't at the tournament as a competitor, but his name carried enormous weight. People whispered about things he could supposedly do that didn't seem humanly possible. Push-ups on just 2 fingers, a punch that landed before you even saw it move, hand speed so quick that regular cameras couldn't capture it. By asking Jim to compare himself to Bruce, that reporter wasn't just asking a question. He was daring a new champion to measure himself against a living legend. Jim didn't blink. He leaned forward into the microphone, a wide grin spreading across his face. "I don't just think I'm faster. I know I'm faster. Bruce Lee is talented, no question, but I've got 8 years in the ring. I've been winning tournaments and competing under real pressure. I am the fastest martial artist in this country, period." The room erupted. Pens flew across notepads. Reporters could smell a front-page headline from a mile away. Some were buzzing with excitement. Others looked genuinely uncomfortable. They knew Bruce Lee's reputation, and they wondered if Jim had just said something he couldn't take back. Ed Parker shifted in his seat. He was a close friend of Bruce's, and he happened to know that Bruce was somewhere in the building watching. Ed quickly tried to soften the moment. Ed started to speak. "Well," he began carefully, "there's a real difference between tournament fighting and a live demonstration." He never got to finish. At the very back of the room, a man stood up. He was lean and quietly built, about 5'7", maybe 135 pounds, dressed simply in black trousers and a black turtleneck. He'd been sitting in the shadows, completely still, taking in every word. It was Bruce Lee. The room cracked open in hushed chaos. "That's him! That's Bruce Lee!" The whispers rippled from the back row to the front as Bruce began moving toward the stage. Cameras swung around, reporters scrambled to their feet. Bruce walked with total calm, no rush, no theatrics, and stepped up onto the stage.
He crossed directly to the table and stopped right beside Jim Kelly. There was no anger in his face, no aggression, just stillness. He looked at the man who had just told 50 reporters he was faster than him, and he waited. The room held its breath. When Bruce spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried to every single corner. "Jim," he said evenly, "you just told 50 reporters that you know you're faster than me. Would you like to prove it? Right here, right now, in front of everyone?" But that wasn't quite the right word for it. Bruce wasn't blocking at all. He was intercepting, meeting each punch while it was still traveling, which meant he wasn't reacting to Jim's movements. He was reading Jim's intentions before the strikes even began. Switching tactics, Jim launched a spinning back fist, a circular strike with unpredictable timing, designed specifically to catch opponents off guard. He put everything into the rotation. But as his fist curved towards its target, Bruce's hand was already there, waiting, parked at the exact point of impact. He stopped the spin cold, as if he'd known it was coming before Jim had even decided to throw it. Growing desperate now, Jim unleashed his heaviest weapon, a rapid 3-punch combination: jab, cross, hook. Championship-level strikes, thrown at blistering speed, one after the other. Bruce's hands moved in one long, fluid blur. Left, right, left. Each punch was quietly guided off course. 3 strikes, 3 misses. Not one had come anywhere close. Bruce let the silence breathe for a moment before he spoke. "You are very fast, Jim. You have the speed of a champion." He paused. "But you're relying on rehearsed patterns. I'm not reacting to your hands. I'm responding to your intent. I see your decision before your body even moves." Then Bruce shifted. It wasn't a strike, not really, just a light brush of his fingers against Jim's chest, barely a touch. But the message was devastating. During that last combination, Jim had left himself completely open. Bruce had seen it, stepped into it, and chosen to show him the gap rather than drive through it. He could have ended things right there. He didn't. Bruce stepped back and lowered his hands.
"You are the champion, Jim," he said simply. "You earned that medal. Your speed and skill are absolutely real." He let that land before continuing. "But there is a wide gap between winning a tournament and what I'd call true combat awareness." He explained it plainly. Jim had spent years training to score points, to impress judges, to execute techniques with picture-perfect form. Bruce trained for something else entirely, to end a confrontation in a single moment. Same sport in a sense, but completely different goals. "Neither approach is better than the other," Bruce added. "They're just not the same thing." The room stayed frozen. 50 journalists sat motionless, cameras still rolling, not one of them willing to break the spell. Jim stood in his stance, breathing hard, not from exhaustion, but from the sheer weight of what had just happened. He had thrown his 5 fastest, most practiced strikes at a man who had barely seemed to shift, and he hadn't landed once, not even close. And then that tap on the chest, gentle as a handshake, had said everything words couldn't. Slowly, Jim straightened up and dropped his guard. The confidence that had filled the room an hour ago was gone. What replaced it was something quieter and more valuable, genuine respect and a hunger to understand. He extended his hand. "I was wrong," Jim said. "No hesitation, no excuses. You are faster. Or, like you said, you're earlier. I don't fully understand what just happened, but I felt it. I couldn't touch you." Bruce shook his hand firmly. "You could hit almost anyone," he said. "You're genuinely talented. Just don't confuse winning a trophy with reaching the finish line. There is no finish line." He held Jim's gaze. "There is always more to discover. And there is always someone out there who sees the world a little differently than you do. Jim nodded slowly, his mind already somewhere else, already pulling apart what he'd just experienced, trying to make sense of it. "Would you teach me?" he asked. "That timing, that awareness, I want to understand it." Bruce considered the question for a brief moment. "I can show you the principles," he said, "but you'll have to be willing to question everything you think you already know. You have to unlearn your old habits before you can build new ones," Bruce said. "Can you do that?" Jim didn't pause for even a second. "I have to," he said. "After what I just saw, what I just felt, I need to understand how that's possible." Bruce reached into his pocket and produced a small business card. He held it out to the young champion. "My school is in Chinatown. I'm there Tuesday evenings." He held Jim's eyes for a moment. "Come only if you're truly serious." Jim looked down at the card. "I'll be there," he said quietly, and he meant it. Bruce gave a respectful nod, then turned back toward the room full of stunned reporters. "Thank you all for your time, and congratulations again to today's winners." With that, he stepped off the stage and walked out of the room exactly as he had entered it, without drama, without fanfare, and without looking back. Jim stood alone in the center of the room, 50 pairs of eyes fixed on him. He looked at the card in his hand, then at the gold medal sitting on the table where he'd left it. Something had shifted. An hour ago, that medal had felt like everything. Now it felt smaller somehow, not worthless, but incomplete. He had won the tournament, he had dominated every match, and yet he had just failed a test he hadn't even known he was taking, a test that revealed in less than 20 seconds how much road was still ahead of him. Ed Parker walked over and rested a hand on Jim's shoulder. "Don't let it get to you," Ed said gently. "Bruce does that to everyone, even the very best. He's not trying to humiliate you. That's his way of teaching." Jim shook his head slowly. "I don't feel humiliated. I feel like I've just woken up. I thought I was measuring the right thing, speed, power, accuracy. Turns out I was measuring the wrong thing entirely." True to his word, Jim Kelly walked through the door of Bruce Lee's Chinatown School the following Tuesday evening. Bruce looked up and smiled. "You actually came." "I said I would." Over the next year and a half, Jim trained with Bruce twice a week. What he learned there bore little resemblance to anything taught in a standard karate class. He learned how to read an opponent's intentions before they became actions. He learned to neutralize a move before it fully formed. He learned that timing wasn't the same as reaction speed. It went much deeper than that. It was about awareness, stillness, seeing clearly. Jim kept competing, he kept winning, but his fighting had moved to a completely different level. The speed was still there, but now it came from a place of quiet understanding rather than raw athleticism. Then, in 1973, everything changed. Bruce called with an offer Jim didn't hesitate to accept. "I'm making a film," Bruce told him. "It's called Enter the Dragon. I want you in it." They made the movie together. Two men whose relationship had begun with a tense, 20-second public showdown in a backroom press conference and had grown into one of the most remarkable partnerships in martial arts history. Enter the Dragon became a worldwide phenomenon. Jim Kelly became an international name overnight. But for the rest of his life, whenever people asked Jim about his career, his greatest moments, or what had shaped him most, he didn't lead with the trophies. He told them about that December night in Long Beach. He told them about the moment he declared himself the fastest man in the country and was quietly and undeniably proven wrong before he'd even left the building. He never framed it as a defeat, not once. To Jim, it was the single most important moment of his career.
because being genuinely wrong and being humble enough to admit it turned out to be the very first step towards becoming something far greater than a champion. The story of Jim Kelly and Bruce Lee isn't really a story about speed. It's about the wisdom to stay open when everything in you wants to stay closed. It's about the courage to say, "I was wrong," in front of 50 cameras and mean it. Those 17 seconds didn't diminish Jim Kelly. They made him. Because mastery, as Bruce understood better than almost anyone, was never a destination. It was simply the decision, made over and over again, every single day, to keep walking the path.